And your last reminder to get your copy of the 2023 Plantiful Planner, which is a planner created for plant parents by Plant Parent Me, is available in my Amazon. Make sure you order it now so you can get it in time for the new year. And I also did a giveaway for the 2023 planner, which is just a planner version of the Plantiful Planner. And the winner for that giveaway is Chad Gardens in LA. Thank you so much, Chad, for entering the giveaway. And please do send me an email, mywasteslesslife@gmail.com, or send me a DM on Instagram at mywasteslesslife to send me your mailing address and your preference, whether you'd like the hardcover or the softcover version of the 2023 planner. But yeah, so let's go ahead with this video.
Hi everyone, it's Marianne. In today's video, I'm sharing with you my top 10 plants in 2022. Thank you so much for joining me today. And this is arguably one of my favorite videos to make throughout the entire year, is to let you know my top 10 plants in my plant collection. And some of these plants are probably familiar to you, or you can already guess that would make it my top 10 because I mentioned them quite a few times in my videos, but some of them might surprise you. So let's see what made it in my top 10 plants. But before we get started, if you're new to my channel, hi, my name is Marianne. Welcome to My Wasteless Life, where I take you along my houseplant and sustainable lifestyle journey and share with you some of my tips and tricks along the way. I also share some of my personal and travel vlogs here and there. So if that type of content interests you, make sure to subscribe to my channel before the end of this video, and make sure to also like and comment down below. Let me know what is your favorite plant this year. I would love to hear from you. But yeah, let's go ahead and get started. So in choosing the plants that made it into my top 10, I basically look at one, of course, aesthetics. They look really good. Second is their growth. And third is if they had any issues with me this year or not. And as you might have guessed already, most if not all of these plants never gave me a headache this year. That's why they made it to the top 10. But yeah, so let's start with the very first one, which is my Hoya compacta variegata. So this one, I barely talk about it in my videos because I'm still waiting for it to get bigger. And I got this from Chicago Plant Care Shop, and I think it has been with me for almost 2 years now. And for a nearly 2-year-old plant, this is quite small, but it started out as a much larger plant. I think it was in a 3 or 4 inch pot with 2 or 3 other plants in it. But when I brought it back with me in Maryland, those died out. I was only left with this, and honestly, I was pretty much left with a single cutting. And you know, Hoya compactus grow very slowly, especially this one is a variegated one. But I'm actually already impressed with the amount of growth that it has already. So I'm actually happy that it is growing, and I've noticed noticeable growth this year. That's why it made it into my top 10. And this one is still kind of hard to find, or if you find it, it still gets pricey or not as variegated. So I'm really happy with this one because this is like a very variegated Hoya compacta, and I can't wait for it to grow a bit more. I'm pretty sure I'm gonna get a much fuller plant or a much longer Hoya compacta variegata this time next year. So the first one in my top 10 plants, my Hoya compacta variegata. Next one in my top 10 is no stranger to this channel, which is my Scindapsus silver lady. And as you can see, it is growing so much, shingling on this moss bowl, and I'm really happy with it because this is one of my plants that I started out with a single cutting, and it has grown so much. And Scindapsus are also known for being slow growers, but as mentioned, this is one of those plants that once it gets going, it gets going. So not only it is shingling like I want to, I'm very impressed with the growth. It is still growing. It hasn't gone to dormancy yet, so I'm not sure if it will. I kind of hope it does because I don't want it to outgrow the pole anytime soon. And when it comes to my Scindapsus pictus, if I'm going to pick one to keep, it's definitely this silver lady. Next one on my top 10 is a crowd favorite, and I think it still is, even though her prices have gone down. And I think more so now that the prices have gone down and has become more available, the Pink Princess Philodendron. So I got mine off a trade in a much smaller plant, and I'm really excited to have this one. At first, I wasn't really into the pink princess philodendron, but now that I have it, I'm really getting into it. And it wasn't producing variegated leaves for me for the longest time, and it finally did produce a new one over here. So I'm really excited about that, and it also has another new leaf coming. So call me a pink princess philodendron convert, because I'm really loving this one. If I have to pick one to keep among my bush type philodendrons, definitely the pink princess philodendron is the one that's going to be part of my collection. Next plant in my plant collection is a ficus plant, and I love my ficus trees. If I could collect them all, I would, but they just end up taking up a lot of space once they grow. And one ficus that I have wanted to add in my plant collection for a long time is the Ficus tiniki. So I had this too for I think a couple of years now. I got this from the sale. I forgot which location. I think it's also in Chicago. The sale is actually also in the DC area now, but I haven't been. I hope to visit their shop really soon. And I got this in a much smaller plant, but now it's also growing so much. And what I love about this is it is also very variegated. I've seen a lot of tinikis before that are sold in big box stores or even in regular nursery, but they are not very variegated. You mostly see the green part and hardly the cream part. And as you can see with mine, it has a lot of the cream variegation. So I really like this one. I'm glad that I finally have it in my collection. I initially had the opportunity to get it off a big box store that's already kind of like a huge plant, and I didn't get it. For some reason, I don't understand why I didn't get it. It was only $15 too. And each time I think about that plant that I missed the opportunity to get one, I always like kick myself for it. But now that I had got this, even though I got it as a much smaller plant, it is growing, and it is growing a bit fast. So I really don't mind that it is starting out small. I started out small with another ficus that I'm going to mention that's going to be in a top 10 list. And that one also started out pretty much the same size as this. And that one, it's a showstopper. So make sure you watch until the end of the video to find out which of my ficus plant that I am referring to. Next one in my top 10 list is another philodendron, but this one is the climbing type. And again, this is not a surprise to many of you that have been watching me for a while, my Philodendron verrucosum. So I got this from a plant trade earlier in the summer, I believe, in Plants Alive, when they were having a plant swap event with Cultivate the City. And I actually didn't trade anything for this. Some of you might know the story already. It was gifted to me. The person who had it, it wasn't really working out for her, so she was giving away cuttings of her verrucosum. And I wasn't really into verrucosum. It was never part of my wish list. But since I'm getting one for free, why not try my hand on it? And honestly, among all the climbing philodendrons that I tried out this year, this is the one that worked out the best for me. Technically, the only one that is working out well right now, although some of them are on demand and on the way to becoming like this, hopefully next year. But this one was just like strong from the start. I propagated it in sphagnum moss and just left it, honestly, and it just grew, and I noticed it like growing and propagating. I eventually gave it this D-shaped moss bowl, and it has produced all these leaves for me. And as you can see with the newest one, it is so huge, velvety, and you get the red underside, especially for the holiday season. I think it gives out a very much holiday vibes with the green, the velvet, and the red underside. So I'm really happy and excited about this. It is also quickly filling out the D-shaped moss bowl is in. So I might have to extend this too during this winter season. It hasn't gone into dormancy yet. So I might be the only plant parent who wishes their plant to go into dormancy during the winter season. It's just because I don't have enough space for them, and it just makes it easier for me to take care of all of them indoors if they just go through dormancy during the winter period. So I don't have to worry about extending them or propagating them or anything like that while they're indoors. I also like that the stems, or like the petioles, are short. They're not like super elongated, so they don't take up too much space in the moss bowl, and the leaves are pretty much stacked on top of each other. So another thing that I liked about it, it is growing really, really well. I hope it continues to do so. I heard verrucosums could be problematic, especially if you're a first time philodendron plant parent, But so far, again, knock on wood, it's working out for me. I hope it continues to do so because it is definitely becoming one of my favorite houseplants in my collection, and the reason it made it into my top 10 plants. And the next one is my, again, no surprise, my Scindapsus Silver Hero. And this is one of my Scindapsus that I imported from Indonesia. Highly do not recommend because it was from Etsy. It was just a fiasco, but luckily I did get my money back. But I basically ended up with a node with this Scindapsus Silver Hero. So I'm really surprised and grateful that from that node, I now have this plant. So look at it. Like by looking at it, you wouldn't really know or imagine that it used to be like from an ailing node, like a node that was like close to dying. It was pretty much yellow when I got it. So I have like about 3 plants in here. The 2 are the one that is growing really strong, and I have like a smaller one down here, and it's also shingling on this coco coir pole, and it is outgrowing it. So I am kind of like worried about extending it again this winter season. It's one of those plants that hasn't gone to dormancy, and I don't really want to propagate it yet because I want to keep it into like 1 or 2 plants, maybe 3, just because it helps it grow larger leaves this way, and it's just also easier to maintain if I want to keep it in a pole. So I don't know, but I'm really excited about the future of this plant. I really want to make sure it grows bigger leaves and continues shingling. It is kind of challenging now during the winter season, although it is underneath the grow light. As you might see, the leaves are starting to flare out because it is searching for light constantly. So it's not like flat on the coco coir pole like it used to be, like down here. So it's starting to flare out a little bit, but now that I've put it a lot closer to the grow light, hopefully it will prevent it from doing that, and it would continue to grow like it did at the bottom. But yeah, my Scindapsus Silver Hero, really proud of this one. One of my biggest accomplishment as a plant parent was growing this plant. So definitely deserving of its spot in the top 10 list. So next on my list is my Syngonium albo. So I also don't talk much about this plant, but it is definitely my top 10 because it is such a beautiful plant. Like, I adore it so much. It's also very easy to grow, and the reason I don't talk about it is because it's such a low maintenance plant that I barely have any issues with it. So there's not really anything to talk about. Like at first I had it in a self-watering planter, and I think I did a shorts on it where I was repotting it because the roots have grown into the water reservoir, but it was very easy to repot, and then eventually I did put it in this planter to be able to give it this moss pole to allow it to climb, because people were also asking how come your Syngonium albo was bushy and not climbing like others. Well, because initially I propagated a bunch of single leaf cuttings, that's why it looked bushy, but now it has grown and already needed a pole to climb on, and this is what it looks like. And the reason that I chopped off my original one single leaf cuttings because the gap in between the leaves were getting way too long. But with this one, as you can see, the leaves are pretty much stacked on top of each other. There's no huge gap in between the leaves. So I really like that about it. And with this one, I don't worry way too much about like the leaves that are completely white. Yes, they eventually die out, but they eventually will also produce leaves that have the green variegation in them. So compared to like, let's say the Monstera albo, I know it's a big issue once it starts producing completely white leaves. With this one, I don't really worry about that issue at all. Eventually, it would just push out green leaves. I don't have many Syngoniums in my plant collection. This is probably like 1 of 3 that I have. But unlike other genus of houseplants where the variegated kind is the one that is harder to care for, especially the albo variegated, this one is not the case. This is the same level of care as a regular Syngonium that is not variegated, like my Syngonium chiapens over there. Kind of same situation. It's not very fussy plant. So Syngoniums are great houseplants for beginners if they're your type. I don't have a lot of them in my plant collection because I feel like a lot of Syngoniums do look alike. And as I have mentioned in previous videos, my goal with my plant collection these days is to have unique looking plants and not have plants that look like each other. Because in the past, I like to collect every single variety and form of a houseplant that I like, kind of like with pothos, even though they look exactly the same with just very minute differences. But now I kind of like my plants to look different from each other. But I'm really glad to have the Syngonium albo in my plant collection. It was originally from an import order, and honestly probably one of my successful import orders that I ever did. Not that I do a lot of import orders, but Syngonium albo, one of my top 10 plants in 2022. And the next one on my top 10 list is my Ficus audrey. So my Ficus audrey is downstairs, and as mentioned earlier, it started out the same size as my tiniki, and in just 2 years it has grown into this beautiful Ficus audrey tree, and it has also branched out in several places. And this is the plant that I use to demonstrate to how to make your ficus plant branch. And this one, honestly, I've only did the branching once, but it branched out in multiple places. So if you have a Ficus audrey, you probably only have to notch it once for it to grow several branches. And I really like this one. I gave it also a new white pot this year, the one that I got from Michael's on sale, and it's really beautiful. I love it. It's definitely up there with all of my houseplants, which is why I made it in the top 10 list. But when it comes to my ficus plants, it's probably my most favorite ficus of this year. Don't let the others hear it, but I really like it. It's gorgeous, and I can't wait for it to grow even more and to actually become in the tree, because my goal with that is to actually make it tree shaped and not just like grow straight with branches, but really shape it into a tree. So I'm really excited about that. I think we can achieve that next year with the rate it is growing. Really proud of that Ficus audrey. Love it. Highly recommend it too. If also you're new to ficus, you don't want to take a chance on a fiddle leaf fig, I think a Ficus audrey is a much easier care ficus. People have different opinions though. People think a Ficus audrey is finicky, but for me, in my experience, it has been a very easy care plant. So highly recommended if you want to get into ficus plants. And the penultimate one in my top 10 list, my Manjula pothos. So I've always wanted to add this to my favorites video each season, but I keep holding off because I know this is a top 10 plant, and I'm exactly right. She is my longest trailing houseplant right now. You can see my shorts to see how long she has been trailing, and I'm really excited for this houseplant. I know this is a very much coveted pothos plant, and to have this much of it, I'm really lucky and fortunate, and I'm really happy with it. It is an easy care plant. It is a pothos after all, and I'm really excited with the amount of growth it did this year and how beautiful it is, how large the leaves still are, even though they're already trailing really long. And I've been debating though whether to prune it or not, because you know me, I like to prune my trailing houseplants to keep them healthy and bushy. But with this one, I just like, because it's trailing so long, I don't have the heart to prune it yet, but eventually I probably would have to. Just not right now though, because I don't want to be propagating a bunch of cuttings as well, because even nowadays when I prune my plants, I just like throw away the cuttings because I already kind of like stop myself from like propagating and duplicating my plants. But with this one, it's kind of hard for me to waste the cuttings. I definitely want to propagate it so I could like either give it away, trade it, or sell it down the line. But I just want to make sure I have enough time and space for me to propagate the cuttings when I finally do decide to propagate this plant. But I'm really proud of it. I'm really happy with it, and definitely deserving of its spot in my top 10 list, my Manjula pothos. And can we get a drum roll for the last one in my top 10 plants in 2022? None other than my thigh constellation Monstera. Not a big surprise. I'm pretty sure you've been looking at my video. What about that plant? What about that plant? That definitely have to be in your top 10 list. Well, it is. My thigh constellation Monstera is definitely on my top 10 list. And if you've been following my plant journey this year, you know I had a Costa Farms thigh constellation Monstera that I won from their giveaway last year. I had it for about a year up until this growing season when it started deteriorating and experienced root rot, and try as I might, nothing I did help it bounce back from root rot. I mean, I made mistakes, definitely. So I'm not trying to repeat those mistakes when it comes to this thigh constellation Monstera. This one I got from an import order. I actually got this before the Costa Farms one. And I have grown this once and propagated once before to trade for another plant. So it's starting out a little bit small, even though I had it for 3 years already. This time I'm just like letting it grow, making sure it grows big. But it does have another grow point underneath here. Hopefully that side grows too, so that I could finally do the trades that I've been promising people and the giveaway that I've been promising you all. I just hate to be like a tease. I keep saying, oh, I'm gonna give away a Thigh Constellation Monstera. Never really gotten around it. Honest to God, I really wanted to, but the Thigh Constellation Monstera from Costa Farms died and kind of like derailed that plan. So hopefully with this one, as long as it continues growing like this, I will finally be able to do the promised giveaway and trades that I've been planning and been promising people next year. So really hoping and really rooting for this plant. And after what I've been through with the Costa Farms Thigh Constellation Monstera, this one definitely deserves a spot in my top 10 houseplants in 2022. So those are my top 10 plants in 2022. So I'm really happy with those plants. There are plants, of course, that I wish I could squeeze in the list, but I could only mention 10. But I'm really excited for them, and hopefully they'll make it in future videos, like favorites videos. Maybe they'll make the top 10 list next year or in future favorites videos. And speaking of favorites videos, I will come out with my 2022 favorites after this one next week, and that would include like my favorite houseplant for 2022. So if you want to take a guess which one I would say is my favorite for 2022, let me know down in the comments as well. But yeah, so thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. If you're new here, do subscribe. I come up with videos every week. And if you haven't yet, check out these videos up here until my next one. But until then, I see you. I appreciate you. Take care of yourself and each other, and have a plentiful day. Bye.